The saloon was the heart of the bustling town, a place where townsfolk gathered for laughter and stories. As the sun dipped below the horizon, warm light spilled from the painted windows, inviting everyone inside. Wooden barrels lined the walls, filled with all sorts of spirits, while the scent of roasted meats wafted through the air, drawing in hungry patrons. The lively chatter and clinking of glasses created a melody of joy that filled the room. In the center of it all was Lily, the saloon girl, who danced gracefully between tables, her infectious smile brightening even the dullest faces. She knew every regular by name and shared a laugh or two with them as she poured drinks. The atmosphere was electric, filled with excitement and camaraderie. It felt like a safe haven away from the worries of the world outside. But as patrons sipped their whiskey and played cards, whispers of trouble drifted in like a shadow. The sheriff's 8 deputies had gathered nearby, their stern faces hinting at a serious discussion brewing under their jovial exterior. Little did anyone know that this lively evening would twist into chaos before the night was over, forever changing the familiar comfort of the saloon. In a shadowy corner of the saloon, Sheriff Hank Thompson sat at a worn table, flanked by his 8 deputies. Each man had his own unique way of handling their duties. Deputy Jake was the jokester, quick with a laugh and often lightening the mood, while Deputy Art was all seriousness, his brow perpetually furrowed as he scanned the room for trouble. The other deputies ranged from calm and collected to hot-headed and impulsive, creating a diverse mix of personalities that made up the sheriff's team. They gathered that evening under the heavy weight of a recent dispute between rival ranchers, tension crackling in the air like static before a storm. Sheriff Thompson knew he had to keep the peace, fearing that a confrontation could spiral out of control at any moment. His seasoned leadership instilled confidence in the team. He had seen trouble many times before. As they exchanged wary glances, the jovial laughter around them contrasted sharply with their serious conversation. The jokes being shared by the patrons felt trivial compared to the brewing conflict outside the saloon walls. They shared whispers and strategies, each deputy ready to protect their town at any cost, though none could predict how quickly that evening would plunge into chaos. The tension in the saloon thickened as the laughter faded, replaced by murmurs filled with unease. Suddenly, the doors burst open, and 2 ranchers, Tom and Bill, staggered in, their faces flushed with anger. They had been quarreling outside, and the crowd quickly sensed that trouble was brewing. Tom shoved Bill, and before anyone could intervene, a fist collided with Bill's jaw, sending him sprawling against a table. Patrons jumped back in shock as their calm evening shattered. Some quickly took sides, cheering for Tom or shouting at Bill to stand up. The saloon's lively atmosphere transformed in an instant, conversations halted, and fear prickled through the air like electricity. Lily watched from behind the bar, her heart racing as she gripped a glass tightly. The laughter that once filled the room was replaced by shouts and threats. Sheriff Thompson and his deputies sprang into action, but they were met with chaos as patrons rushed to join the fight or pull their friends away from danger. In just moments, the saloon became a battleground, with chairs flying and voices raised in anger. The sheriff's hope for peace seemed to slip away as he realized that this fight could spark an even greater conflict between the rival ranchers outside. In the midst of the chaos, Deputy Caleb, a young officer with a quick temper, felt cornered by the escalating violence. As fists flew and the sound of shattering glass filled the air, he panicked. In his haste to assert control, he pulled out his revolver, aiming it toward the ruckus in hopes of scaring everyone back into line. But in that moment of fear and confusion, his finger pulled the trigger. A deafening crack echoed through the saloon, and gasps erupted from the crowd. The bullet missed its intended target and ricocheted off a nearby barrel before striking Lily, who had been trying to duck behind the bar for safety. She fell with a gasp, clutching her side as shock washed over her face. Time seemed to freeze as patrons turned to stare in disbelief. The atmosphere shifted from frenzy to horror in an instant. Caleb's heart dropped as he realized what he had done. His rash decision had cost an innocent girl her safety. Sheriff Thompson rushed forward, shouting for order while the deputies scrambled to contain both the fight and the panic surrounding Lily's injury. Chaos transformed into fear as everyone processed the gravity of the situation. As the sound of the gunshot faded, a stunned silence enveloped the saloon. Patrons stared wide-eyed, their faces pale with disbelief as they processed what had just unfolded. Shouts of panic erupted from the crowd. Some rushed toward Lily, their faces twisted in fear, while others fled for the exit, desperate to escape the scene. "Someone call for a doctor," cried Betty, a regular, her voice shaking as she elbowed her way through the crowd. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she knelt beside Lily, trying to assess the injury. The jovial conversations that had filled the air moments earlier were replaced with frantic voices asking if anyone had seen what happened. Deputy Art and a few others closed in on Caleb, anger flashing in their eyes. "What were you thinking?" Art shouted, his voice hoarse with frustration. "You don't pull a gun in here." The atmosphere shifted again as a chorus of shouts echoed their anger. Patrons saw themselves at risk from the very people meant to protect them. Sheriff Thompson hurried to calm the situation. He held up his hands, commanding attention and respect. "Everyone stay calm. We'll get this sorted out," he said, but his eyes betrayed concern. With fear and rage swirling together, it was clear that trust in the sheriff's deputies had begun to fray. As the tension in the saloon escalated, Sheriff Hank Thompson felt the weight of his authority being questioned. The deputies exchanged uneasy glances, their loyalty shaken by Caleb's reckless actions. Deputy Art, still fuming, spoke out loud enough for the patrons to hear. "How can we trust you to keep us safe if one of your men is shooting at innocent people?" His words sparked murmurs throughout the crowd, igniting a fire of discontent among the townsfolk. Patrons who had once respected the sheriff now shouted accusations. "You're supposed to protect us," they yelled, their voices laced with anger and fear. The sense of safety that had characterized the saloon was replaced by a feeling of betrayal. Sheriff Thompson's reputation hung in the balance, and he could feel every eye scrutinizing him, waiting for reassurance. Desperate to regain control, he raised his voice, trying to restore order amidst the clamor. "I understand your concerns. But we need to focus on helping Lily and ensuring everyone's safety." His heart raced as he realized that failure to act decisively could lead to a complete breakdown of trust in his leadership. He needed to act quickly before the situation spiraled beyond repair, knowing that a loss of confidence could have dire consequences for the entire town. With the air thick with fear and uncertainty, Sheriff Thompson knew swift action was necessary. He turned to his deputies, his voice steady but urgent. "We must prepare for the worst. It's clear that tensions are high, and there's a chance that rival ranchers might retaliate for what happened here tonight." The deputies exchanged glances, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "Light the whiskey kegs," Thompson commanded, gesturing towards the barrels lining the back wall of the saloon. "We can use them as barricades if needed." The deputies sprang into action, grabbing lanterns and matches. As they lit the kegs, a flickering glow filled the room, casting an eerie but determined light on their faces. They positioned them strategically near the entrances, creating a makeshift barrier that would not only slow down any potential intruders but also serve as a warning. "Stay vigilant," shouted Deputy Art, rallying their collective spirit. Patrons watched in growing unease, the warmth of camaraderie turning into a seriousness that heightened the saloon's already charged atmosphere. Sheriff Thompson felt a mix of fear and resolve. He would have to lead with strength if he wanted to protect both the townspeople and restore order in this tumultuous night. As night fell, the flickering flames from the whiskey kegs cast a warm yet ominous glow across the saloon. The flames danced wildly, illuminating the worried faces of patrons and deputies alike, creating an unsettling contrast to the calm that had once filled the room. Outside, shadows crept along the dirt road, and the sounds of hooves echoed in the distance, an unmistakable sign that trouble was looming. The air was thick with tension as whispers spread among the townsfolk gathered inside. They could hear groups forming outside, their angry voices growing louder as they discussed their next move. Sheriff Thompson peered through a dusty window, his heart racing at the prospect of a confrontation. He knew that rival ranchers would not take lightly to what had occurred earlier in the saloon. Deputy Art stood watch by the door, his grip tight on his weapon, scanning for any signs of movement. "They're coming," he muttered under his breath, eyes narrowed. Inside, fear mingled with determination. Everyone felt it, the impending siege had begun. Sheriff Thompson took a deep breath, preparing himself for what he hoped would not be a night of violence but feared might become one. The fate of their town rested heavily on their shoulders as they braced for whatever lay ahead. The tension outside the saloon intensified as a group of outraged townsfolk gathered, their faces set with determination and anger. They stood just beyond the flickering light of the whiskey kegs, shouting for justice and demanding accountability for Lily's injury. The night air buzzed with their heated voices, echoing like thunder across the dusty street. Sheriff Thompson peered through the window, his heart pounding as he spotted familiar faces among the crowd, friends and neighbors now united in their outrage. "We can't let this escalate," he said to his deputies, who stood ready but visibly uneasy. Deputy Art gripped his weapon tightly, glancing between Thompson and the growing mob outside. "They want blood," he warned, his voice low but urgent. Determined to avoid violence, Thompson stepped outside, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "Listen. I understand your anger, but we need to talk this out." The crowd quieted slightly but remained restless, some shouting back that they wanted action, not words. With emotions running high on both sides, it was clear that a standoff was inevitable. As tensions mounted, Thompson felt the weight of leadership heavy upon him. He had to find a way to defuse the situation before it spiraled into chaos once again. The tension snapped like a taut wire as the crowd outside erupted in anger, and the first shot rang out. It was Deputy Art who fired, sending a warning shot into the air in an attempt to disperse the mob. But the townsfolk, fueled by rage and grief over Lily's injury, retaliated with their own gunfire, bullets whizzing past the sheriff and his deputies. Bravery and fear mingled in the chaos as Sheriff Thompson shouted for his men to return fire, urging them to protect their position. The deputies took cover behind the whiskey kegs, their hearts racing as they aimed at the silhouettes of enraged townsfolk. "Stay calm. We're not here to hurt you," Thompson called out, but his voice was drowned out by the cacophony of gunshots. Amidst the turmoil, Caleb struggled with regret and fear as he fought alongside his fellow deputies, realizing how quickly a single rash decision had spiraled into violence. The saloon, once a place of community and laughter, had transformed into a battlefield. In this crucial moment, both sides faced each other with a mixture of courage and trepidation, each unwilling to back down but fearing where this conflict might lead them all. As the gunfire continued, a sudden shout rang out from the outskirts of the crowd, cutting through the chaos. It was Betty, the local healer, rushing forward with a desperate plea. "Stop. This isn't what Lily would want. We must come together." Her voice trembled but resonated with conviction. The gunfire ceased momentarily as faces turned toward her, confusion and hesitation replacing anger. Sheriff Thompson took this chance to step forward, lowering his weapon and calling out to the townsfolk. "She's right. We're all in this together. We can't let this tragedy tear us apart." His earnestness pierced through the tension, urging both sides to reconsider. One by one, members of the crowd began to lower their weapons, caught between their fury and the desire for unity. Art lowered his revolver too, feeling the weight of regret lift off his shoulders. Slowly but surely, a truce formed as both sides set aside their grievances for the moment. This pivotal moment taught Caleb a lesson in responsibility. He realized that every action has consequences and that the price of fear can lead to devastating results. As peace settled over the saloon again, it marked a turning point for everyone involved, a reminder that understanding can prevail over anger when truly sought after. As dawn broke over the town, the events of the previous night lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken questions about justice and community safety. The saloon, once filled with laughter, now stood as a stark reminder of how quickly peace could unravel. The townsfolk emerged from their homes, casting wary glances at one another, haunted by the chaos they had experienced. Sheriff Thompson knew that while a truce had been reached, true healing would take time. Trust between the townspeople and law enforcement needed mending. Many wondered if Caleb could ever fully return to his duties after injuring Lily and how such an unpredictable incident could happen under his watch. The trauma would ripple through their everyday lives, conversations would be hushed where they once flowed freely, and neighbors became hesitant to lend a helping hand. Yet amid the fear, there was hope for unity and a stronger community forged in shared experience. Betty, deeply affected by her role in mediating the standoff, took it upon herself to organize gatherings where townsfolk could share their feelings and rebuild relationships. With this new focus on communication and understanding, the town slowly learned that addressing their pains together might lead them towards lasting safety and kinship in an uncertain world.